Hey, what is up guys, MKBHD here, and you've probably seen a dolly camera move, something like that. Or maybe you've seen a sort of a slow pan and arcing shot. These are all pretty common. But what about something more complicated? For that, you're gonna need something a little more dope. What's up guys, MKBHD here, and welcome back to Dope Tech. For this one, we flew out to Portland, Oregon, home of motorized precision, to take a look at some robots. But not just any robots. These are what I would call cinema robots, and as someone that's into video at all, this is absolutely dope tech. So like I explained in the intro, there are all types of stabilizers and video tools and things like that to help a human move a camera in a certain way. And actually, in most shots, you can kind of tell what type of device is being used. Like this shot, dolly cam. This would be a steady cam. This is clearly a slider, and this is a crane. But you've probably seen some crazy shots in a movie or in a music video somewhere. For a shot like this, the answer is Kira. Kira has been responsible for tons of shots in commercials for tech products and car videos, etc., and you might not have even noticed. But those are the shots that aren't CGI, but that are super precise and difficult that a human could never do with any tools that exist now, hence the name motorized precision. And then the level of dope tech is actually twofold here. It's the hardware with the actual robots and MP Studio, the software to control what these robots do. And they can do a lot. Here's the rundown. So the Kira robot itself is fully metal, extends up to 9 feet tall, has a couple fully articulating axes, and it can move up to 9 feet per second in any direction while carrying up to 40 pounds. And then the robot is controlled with an Xbox controller, which has enough buttons to hit every axis. So you get forward and backward, you get up and down, pan left and pan right, tilt up and tilt down, and even roll clockwise or roll counterclockwise. And once you've set the position, you can move the robot through space and time to other positions with keyframes in the software, MP Studio. And then on top of that, if you're using a manual lens, which you probably are at this point, there's motorized gears, which are also part of the robot, which can control focus, iris, and zoom during the camera move. And then on top of all of that, if you're shooting with a red camera, which is also connected to the robot, not only do you get a live preview of what you're pointed at and you have a remote start-stop, but you also get all your red raw controls, so you can change resolution, shutter speed, compression ratio, white balance, etc. Then you hit record, it starts rolling on the camera, and you run the Kira and it plays through the move you made at the speed you picked. And then, like I said, it can go really slow and smooth, or it can go fast. It might be hard to appreciate just how fast 3 meters per second really is, but it's really fast. You gotta know exactly what you're doing to keep it safe. And then of course, the other upside of knowing exactly what you're doing is all the shots you can get with it. The moves you can make are almost literally endless. So shout out to Sean Brown, the CEO of Motorized Precision, for showing me all this, showing me the ropes of the software, and giving some examples of what the robot can do. So really the only thing left to do now is actually shoot with it. So that's what we did. First up, the orbit shot. So this was fun. This was just a bunch of keyframes highlighting different parts from different angles of the same subject. And at every point, the camera stops, and we made sure that keyframe also had the subject perfectly in focus. And the end result just looks ridiculous, like you could see, almost kind of like this CGI. The motion blur is just dependent on the shutter speed we picked, but it's super real. And then from behind the scenes, you can see all the hinges working, all the cables plugged into the camera, straight into the robot that's talking to the computer. Pretty incredible if you ask me. Next up, we did a bit more of a traditional, like a phone on a table shot, which you've seen before, but with a twist. Check this one out. Oh yeah, okay, so this one started off slow, like a normal slider shot, like you've seen before, but then moved in quick and focused on the camera of the phone. You can probably imagine doing something like this with some motion graphics or some tracked pointers in there, And again, that shows off the precision of the robot being able to nail the focus instantly And you can't forget, this shot is also repeatable as many times as you want. So you can do it multiple times with different phones, different items, stack the clips, mess with opacity, etc. It's crazy. But for me, the beauty of it is how close to the table the whole rig gets without touching it. And there's no worries because there's no shake or wobble at all. Super precise. Okay, so this one was pretty simple, but still, if you saw it in a video, you might have your mind blown. But it's up to the top, spinning around, and then down on the other side. And I even think having more time with it, we'd be able to make this all like one continuous move. So you'd float over the top of the laptop, spin around without stopping, and then come down on the other side. But nevertheless, pretty sure that's next to impossible without this robot. And then next we decided to do something a little bit more difficult. Okay, so that was sick, but the challenge here, what really makes this one more difficult, is the fact that I'm a human, not a robot, and it's actually really hard for me to hold myself and the phone in the exact same spot for long enough that we can set up all the keyframes and the robot can do the move and get the phone in focus every time. So there's actually plenty of takes that we didn't use that ended with the phone being like a little bit out of focus because I had moved. But I think getting this one right made it that much more impressive. And then last but not least, we broke out a bit of a different robot, also made by Motorized Precision. This one's called Mia instead of Kira. It's a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller, but still equally impressive. Could probably fit something like this in our studio, wink wink. But it's also now on a massive motorized track system. So we did a little walking tracking shot. So obviously that one's equally awesome. For the little bit of time we had to play with it and set it up, you know, matching my speed with the walking of the robot sliding speed and then stopping at just the right place so it swings past my head instead of through my head, obviously absolutely worth it. So that's it. That's the beauty of Motorized Precision, robots that control and hold cameras that can pull off low speed or high speed moves precisely that humans literally can't. Obviously, you can take this thing to the next level if you got like a slow motion camera on there. Like if you imagine a Phantom Flex on this arm swinging around super fast, the shots you could get out of it are absolutely incredible. And again, if you can't underrate the software, MP Studio, there are older iterations of this same sort of robot control thing where you literally had to put in coordinates into an Excel spreadsheet to get a robot to move like this. So obviously this is miles better. Generally, people don't buy these robots. They get rented for certain shoots, like the commercials and music videos we talked about. But let me know, what would you use a robot like this for? So either way, that's been it. Hey Kira, you mind if we do this outro together? So we're just gonna wave goodbye. Ready? Thanks for watching, guys. Talk to you in the next one. Peace. Yo, what's up? MKBHD here. Welcome back to Dope Tech in Techtember, the busiest, most wonderful time of the year. But I've got 3 really cool things to show you. So first up is this laptop here. This is the Dell XPS 13 Plus. It's probably the hottest laptop design I have ever seen. And then when you actually get to using the laptop, you pretty quickly realize it's a little bit more difficult to use, specifically because of the sick design. It's like probably the purest example of form over function I've ever seen. Let me explain. So just look at this thing. Look at this thing. Most laptops look really similar to each other, but when I picture like a modern, even slightly futuristic laptop, this is what comes to mind. It's this all white, clean, thin, folding piece of metal with edge-to-edge everything, basically. The keyboard goes to edge, but is also particularly flat without being terrible to type on, which looks really good. And it matches up with this 13-inch 4K OLED touchscreen, also going corner to corner. And this is not the only laptop to have a basically full screen display corner to corner, but the fact that it does it all while keeping the webcam up at the top and not having a notch is welcomed. And then down below the keyboard, you have this trackpad, but it's an invisible trackpad. You might have been looking at this laptop wondering, like, why does it look so clean? This is definitely why. It's still a normal sized, normal shaped trackpad under here, but it's an area underneath this single piece of glass that doesn't move at all. It just vibrates with the haptics to simulate the feel of a click, and it's quite good at it. And then all of that put together in this clean metal body with metallic chamfered edges, the 1/2-inch total thickness, it's under 3 pounds, makes it a pretty sweet aesthetic for an everyday laptop. However, y'all know what form over function means. So as hot as this laptop is, there are some pretty clear trade-offs that make it obvious why others aren't running to copy everything that they did here. So like the trackpad, for example, is super good looking, but as you can imagine, when your finger leaves the sensitive surface area, the mouse just stops working. You just kind of have to get used to knowing where it ends. So there's a reason why other laptop manufacturers, even though they also use one-piece trackpads that don't move, they will clearly define the trackpad area visually. And then the keyboard. It's a quirky one. You know, you've got the power button cutting into the backspace button a little bit up on the right side here. There's the shorter up and down arrow keys. I guess for the most part, even though it's flat and the keys aren't particularly clicky, this is a reasonable keyboard until you get to the touch bar right above it. So we've seen touch bars before, and there's a reason why we've kind of just started moving back away from them. This one is definitely not any better than the rest. It's a soft escape key, and then F1 through F12, and then they can turn it into media controls and quick controls as you move around between apps. But this is an even worse version of a touch bar because it's not a screen, so you don't really have visual confirmation of your touch targets, and they're smaller than normal touch targets, and there's no haptic feedback. It's just not fun to use. And then also, you know, yes, this is a beautiful, thin, crafted piece of metal, which is awesome to see in an everyday laptop, but you might have noticed there's only 2 USB-C ports and no headphone jack on this entire laptop, which is not nice to see on an everyday laptop. Actually, here's the perfect example of form over function with this laptop. It's super clean and nice looking, right? There's no like indent for your thumb where you'd normally be able to open the laptop, because I guess they wanted it to look super nice and sharp at the bottom, which it does, but now this is not as easy to, form over function. Either way, I still consider this dope tech just because it is still a pretty respectable laptop inside, decent specs and everything. There's also a high refresh rate display option. I'll link to a full Dave 2D review where he goes over a lot more of this stuff in depth, benchmarks, etc. But for now, I guess I just leave this with a better understanding of why more laptops don't look just like this one. All right, so the next piece of dope tech is something we've had for a little while now. It's actually a piece of gear that we've been using behind the scenes on a couple of these more recent videos. And it's also from the sponsor of this video. It's from EcoFlow. So you might have been watching the Ioniq 5 review and been thinking, wow, this is the best Ioniq 5 review ever made. How did they shoot that? So long story, a lot of fun gear, a lot of practice goes into stuff like that, but one of the most underrated parts behind the whole thing was a mobile power station powering it all. So that was EcoFlow's Delta Pro, which is an absolute tank. This thing was powering the camera, the audio device, the light we used, just everything we used, with way more than enough extra to charge up anyone's laptops or smartphones or any other gadgets. And yes, before we start typing, some of you are eagle-eyed enough to realize that the Rivian we're shooting with also has some power ports, but then how are we supposed to get this shot with the Rivian in the background hundreds of feet away? That would be the Delta Pro. Now, as you've also probably been able to guess by the fact that I'm outside again, yes, this whole video shoot is powered by a Delta Pro, but they also have a smaller, slightly more affordable, more portable version. This is called the Delta 2. It's still ridiculously capable. This here is a 1 kilowatt hour battery, but it's got an expansion port here because you can connect it to more and daisy chain them together and have up to 3 kilowatt hours just of these. And just one of these can power up to 15 devices simultaneously. You can see these 6 AC outlets on the back. Just these by themselves can do 1800 watts of steady output. And then around the front, there's some USB-A and some USB-C ports that'll do 100 watts. And then there's a screen that breaks down how much power you're outputting and how much time it'll last. But even better than this screen, they also have a smartphone app that connects via Bluetooth that just breaks down exactly how much power each port is drawing, the temperatures, the time remaining, and even this real-time graph, which is sick. When we finally do run through this whole thing, it can fast charge up back from 0 to 80% in like 50 minutes, and I think you can go to 100% in under an hour and a half. But it's good for 3,000 charge cycles like that, which is like a decade if you used it a whole thing every single day. It's great. These are the same types of batteries that are in Tesla's vehicles. Very durable. There's also a 5-year warranty that covers everything. It's one of those pieces of gear that you don't realize how important it is to you until it's pointed out to you, like a favorite lens or something. So the bigger Delta Pro power station This guy's 3.6 kilowatt hours and can sustain 3,600 watts of AC output, which is crazy. And that one can even be linked up to your home as a battery backup, and it can be charged up via solar panels or even at a level 2 electric car charging station with included accessories. It can also be charged up via multiple sources at once. It's incredible. This thing is a real beast. But here's the kicker, and this is a question I get like all the time about electric cars. So when you drive a gas car and you run out of gas, you can always have someone go find a nearest gas station, but grab a bunch of gasoline in like a pitcher or a can, bring it to you, and fill it up. What happens if you run out of electricity in a battery-powered car? Well, now the answer is you get a battery, and someone can bring you an actual battery, one of these EcoFlow Pros even, and it'll just plug right in and actually charge up the car straight from the outlet on the side. And it is super impressive. It's not gonna be the fastest charge in the world, but you can see it's drawing nearly 1,000 watts. You can add 1 or 2 miles real quick just to get to the nearest fast charger, and that is incredibly useful. It's the kind of thing where I feel like every roadside assistance vehicle should just have one of these now because of how popular electric cars are getting, and that would help a lot of people out. So yeah, anyway, if you want to get one of these, it's great for our portable studio use, but it's great for peace of mind too. If you want to grab the 2 or the Pro, you can use the promo code I have down below, which is MKBHD EF8. That'll get you 8% off your order, so you're welcome. All right, so a few days ago, I got an email asking if I wanted to try haptic gloves in VR. And I got a lot of weird emails, so I was very close to just skipping over this one, but something made me say yes to this one. And I'm very glad I said yes. So this is a fascinating piece of tech. And the idea is pretty simple. It's not a finished product by any means, but the concept is, what if you could feel inside of VR? Like VR, the visuals are getting so much better. It's entertaining your sense of hearing now too. It's getting more and more immersive, but here's one more of your senses to actually entertain, like feeling stuff inside of the virtual reality world. Now, the major VR headsets that are out right now don't really do this. So this is like a sort of a hack or a layer built on top of that. So for the Quest 2 that I've been using for a while, you have the gloves, and then the gloves attach to the actual controller itself. So you end up looking like you have a rig basically like this as you use it in the game, which is kind of a lot. But they've built some experiences inside of the VR world to actually take advantage of these gloves, and they're pretty impressive.
Before we can start assembling the robot, we need to clean up the place. Place the drink cans inside the trash bin.
You can like kind of hear the haptic engine or motor working, but I'm picking up a can, I can feel that, throwing it out. You can see like one finger at a time move exactly the way you tell it to. Put my thumb in, close it, open it. It's pretty sick.
Pick up the left wheel and snap it to the robot.
Unfortunately, there's no weight of anything. Like when something is heavy, like this should be a really heavy object, I don't know how they would add weight to it, but that would be kind of cool. Alright, this is the part where you get to feel the trigger of the drill. Pick up the drill and just...
of the arms and the wheels of the robot with the drill.
This is a complete experience. I feel the drill vibrating when I squeeze the trigger, and it's only my pointer finger that feels resistance when I squeeze the trigger of the drill. That is good. So there are wires down each of the fingers, as you can see, and they're connected to motors in the knuckles that can give you up to 20 newtons of resistance per finger. Then there's vibration motors in the thumb and the tips of all the fingers and in the palm. So the idea is anytime you grab something or touch something or hit or squeeze something or let go of something, all of that is slightly more feelable. You can feel all of that when wearing the gloves instead of holding a controller. You know, really the most interesting thing to me is that all of this is on the outside of the finger, so it can only do a certain type of force. Like squeezing you can really feel, but you don't actually feel the object in your hands. It would be cool if this was developed more, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think you're going to start to see the other VR headset makers actually work on this problem because they also are thinking about immersion. And then I think the future of this is endless. Like I imagine a lot of sports games, like driving games, feeling the resistance of the wheel while you're in VR, or even something like, I don't know, you're holding a tennis racket or ping pong. Imagine ping pong while feeling the spin you can put on the ball. It's crazy. That's going to be super advanced. Anyway, as of right now, the company that's making these Sense gloves is selling them in super limited quantities to enterprise companies for 4,500 euros a pop. So companies like Volkswagen and the European Space Agency have sets of these for procedural training, which is still pretty cool. But again, I'm really glad I said yes to this experience because this is dope tech. This is the bleeding edge of stuff that makes sense mentally now, but is going to be really cool sometime in the future, and I can't wait for that. Either way, that's been it. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Hey, what's up guys? MKBHD here, and welcome back to Dope Tech. I'm super into doing more of these, especially for 2020, but while we're wrapping up 2019, let's just get right into it. So Dope Tech is for some of the most awesome, incredible, or just fun or interesting pieces of tech that I've discovered or bought or had an experience with that I think are worth sharing. And the first one that I'm going to share with you guys is this guy. You might have seen it. It's the Samsung Galaxy Note 10, but it's clearly not just any Note 10. It's the Star Wars edition Note 10. You might think I'm just into it because it's red and black, and I'm not gonna lie, that's a part of why I'm into it. But this is really a super legitimate Star Wars themed phone. Like, we've seen a lot of special edition phones over the years, and in fact, I have a video coming up of a pretty wild special edition phone that's unlike anything I've ever seen before. But this one really fully leans into the dark side of the Star Wars universe right from the unboxing experience. So I'll leave actually Lou's unboxing video linked in the description because he did a really good one. And then when you get to the phone itself, they really went next level. There's a red ring around the camera and the buttons, as you can see. That's pretty basic. But then you've got the logo of the First Order around the back. And then in the software itself, there's a dark theme. It comes with a wallpaper of the red and black helmet. And even the sounds the phone makes are all very Star Wars-y. Now, I typically mute my phone, like as soon as I take it out the box, I don't use the sounds, but if you want to be this guy on the subway, you can be this guy. But really, the cherry on top is the stylus. The stylus is red, like Kylo Ren's lightsaber. I think it looks pretty sick, and now you can feel like some type of Jedi when you're using the air commands with the red lightsaber stylus. And when you pull it out the phone, every single time, it's gonna make you feel like you're pulling out a lightsaber and putting it back. So they've really thought a lot about this. I think a lot of people are going to see the movie right about now, so this is something they've gotten really into. But I'm just really excited for next year's potentially high refresh rate Galaxy Note 11. But that's beside the point. The point is, this is a special edition phone, and I think they've done a really good job with it. Star Wars Edition Note 10. All right, next up, Colorware is finally shipping their painted AirPods Pros. So if you've watched the channel for a while, you've known about Colorware. I've talked about them, about how they precisely take apart, repaint, customize, and put back together various electronics and new stuff as it comes out. And so as soon as the AirPods Pros got announced, I immediately turned to them and I was like, are you guys gonna do the thing where you paint the AirPods Pros? And they said, yep. So now here they are. And of course, they'll do any color. They have a bunch of colors on their site, but I had to go with matte black everything here because, I mean, who am I really? Matte black case here, matte black earbuds. And you know, I'm just into making them really hard to find if I lose them. So the things that aren't painted are the inside of the case, which I don't think is that big of a deal. And then the rubber tips on the earbuds, of course, which means you're gonna have this sort of contrast now between whatever color you paint the AirPods and the actual rubber tips, making them look that much more like a Pokemon. Now, I'm gonna share a video in the description of someone who sort of did this themselves with AirPods and plated them gold and surprisingly put them all back together and got them to be fully functional. That is more of a super fun artistic video that I think is worth checking out, but it's just sort of impressive to admire that these still work. The squeeze function in the tip still works, the air channel pass through, the impressive noise cancellation, everything is just about how you'd expect, just a new color. I think really the main reason you have them painted is so that they look different in your ears. The case is sort of a nice bonus that you can also get this painted, so if you have more than one on a table, you know which one's yours immediately, but yeah, the look in your ear is what you're doing it for. So my AirPods Pros are matte black now. no regrets. I'll make sure to link these and everything else I talk about in this video in the description right below that like button. Okay, next up is this guy. So big shout out to Rene Ritchie for cluing me into this. This was his favorite piece of tech in that big end of the year collab we did for favorite tech of the year. This is the Oculus Quest. So this is a standalone VR headset. So you might have seen something like the Oculus Rift, which requires a PC to plug into, or you might have seen something along the lines of like slotting your phone into one where the phone does all the powering and all the display. This is sort of a happy medium in between those. So this is the headset, and you might have seen some others that look somewhat like it. Oh my God, I'm in the world already. But there's a couple different sensors built into the outside of it, so there's no trackers that have to be placed around the room or the space you're in. And the headset itself has got the adjustable headband, and everything about it gets you nice and snug, as you'd expect. And thankfully, it charges via USB Type-C. It also has speakers built in, and they're pretty close to your ears, so you don't need headphones. But what they've done is they tossed in some headphone jacks. And when I say jacks, I'm being plural. It has two, one on each side. And so you can use your own headphones and get really immersed. So I was playing these with noise-canceling headphones on top of the headset. So that's like that next extra step to get really immersed in this world. But the difference maker for this Quest is, since there's no trackers, you can just get to an open area, whatever room you want to be in, set this thing up, and you're just sort of free to move around in this world with this battery-powered headset on. And the setup is actually really sick. You put it on in an area that you're not configured in yet, and the sensors on the outside light up and essentially give you this pass-through, so now I can see the camera, hi, and lets you draw the space that you're in literally around you as like a safe zone. They call it a guardian. So once you've drawn that outline, then you have that room to move around, and it keeps track of it, puts up the virtual walls, calibrates the floor, and you're set. And then once you're into the gaming, it is still really impressive. To my eye, while it's not perfect, latency is still pretty low, frame rates are high. It does a pretty good job of filling my field of view, and I was impressed with basically how well it stayed tracked, and I never really noticed it losing positioning at all. And I really like the controllers too. So the ring around the buttons, they help you stay positioned, and based on what buttons you're holding and what your fingers are doing, the hands in the game will mimic like exactly what your hands are doing in real life, down to the finger position. So of course I had a great time playing some of my favorite VR games. Beat Saber and Super Hot are right off the top, like the first ones I recommend for anyone trying to play these. I'm gonna go ahead and try a bunch of new ones now that I have this, since there's like 50 more titles in the Oculus store. But yeah, you can just download the Oculus app on your phone and then add them one by one to your library and try them out. So that's what I'm gonna do. But I got really into this. I think this would be an incredible last second gift for someone that you really, really like. So if you're still in that gift shopping mode, I'll have a link below. So of course, big shout out to Rene for recommending this, and a huge thanks to Oculus for sponsoring this portion of the video. Okay, last but certainly not least is this monster. This is an 88-inch 8K OLED TV made by LG. So as you can tell, it's brand new. We just got it in the studio, and holy crap, is it impressive. So a couple quick facts. Number one, it is the largest OLED display currently in production that you can actually buy right now at 88 inches diagonally. And number two, it's 8K, which means it's 7680 across by 4320 down, which makes this total 33 million pixels. That means this is a 33 megapixel screen. So there's already a lot of good looking 4K displays and 4K OLEDs everywhere, no doubt. This is clearly next level, but it's also not going to be maximized by pretty much anyone. The current version of HDMI doesn't support 8K through a single cable. There's almost no 8K content on TVs or on YouTube or Netflix or anything like that. So getting something like this today for the $30,000 that it costs definitely makes it more of a high-end statement piece, but also like clearly bleeding edge. But even knowing all that, it's still really impressive to look at because number one, it's huge. I think even an 88-inch 4K OLED would look incredible, but it's just a massive panel. But then also number two, while we're sort of waiting for all this 8K stuff, this thing is gonna do its best to upscale and make sub 8K content look better. If you go on LG's website to see how this works, it's not super scientific or explanatory. You know, there's some obvious processing involved. They have two diagrams with two levels of enhance, enhance,
enhance, enhance, enhance.
But what matters at the end is the results. And these speak for themselves. Now, obviously, you're watching this through my camera and then through YouTube processing and then through your screen. So there's almost no way you can fully appreciate what we're looking at here. But even through all that, I feel like you can get the idea that the brightness and the contrast and the colors and just the sheer size and resolution of this TV are on another level. It costs as much as a car, you know, but for people who are into tech, they might just want this more than a car. And that's what makes it dope tech. This is only the second 8K display that's ever been in the studio. The first one was that Dell 8K monitor from a while back, which was the first one that I could ever see the 8K footage we shoot on an 8K screen, and that was incredible. But I mean, an 88-inch screen is just different. A lot of the same funny quirks happen here too. If you plug in the 8K display into a computer and try to game at 8K, scaling can be weird with some games, and most graphics cards will refuse to cooperate, but it's still gonna look great. Upscaled, high resolution, thanks to LG's tech, and I'm very impressed that I can actually tell the difference. So there you have it. All I know is this is gonna make an incredible first piece of tech to move into the new studio space that we're planning for early 2020. That is really exciting, but I think every dope tech piece on this list earns its spot here for its own reason. So that's been it. Thanks for watching this episode. Onward with Tech-sember. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Okay, I got to see something really, really cool. I got to visit some of the secret labs inside of the Walt Disney Company called the Disney Imagineering Labs. So, you know, I've seen some people talk about them a little bit before, but obviously Disney has all these attractions and theme parks and rides, and somebody has to design and engineer all that stuff. And there is a surprising amount of tech that goes into it. And some of it is still experimental and unreleased, where no one outside of Disney, well, except for me now, has gotten to use them. This thing is so cool. So Disney Imagineering has a bunch of these buildings scattered around this California neighborhood that I got to visit, where they make realistic animatronic robots as part of their attractions. They literally greeted me at the door with these little droids, the same ones that are roaming around the theme parks. And these things have a striking amount of similarities to the Boston Dynamics Spot robot that I got to play with a few years ago. You know, that Spot robot was able to navigate any terrain with an adaptive gait, and it followed instructions from a custom but surprisingly easy to learn controller so that it could navigate around and do jobs that humans won't, and is also super fun to play with. These little droids for the theme parks are a lot of the same stuff. They are able to adapt to any terrain. They walk around, they follow instructions from a customized Steam Deck as the controller, which took me like 60 seconds to learn. And they can navigate around relentlessly all day, interacting with guests at a theme park and being fun to play with. It was super fun. And it's also seriously crazy how much tech is even inside one of these things. It's blending all these animations together, from the walking to the standing and looking around. It's pretty cool, but that's not even what I was there to try. I was there specifically to be the first person outside of Disney to walk on the holotile. So, you might have seen some videos about this, the holotile. It's this insane one-of-one 360-degree treadmill, like a moving floor, basically. It's still in an experimental phase, and this is the only one that exists, but it's already got these gears turning in my head about future potential applications, particularly in VR. And actually, one specific thing that I have reservations about, but I'll get to that in a minute. Now, I don't know that anyone's actually fully explained exactly how this thing works yet, but you can see that they're basically walking across a huge number of these tiny 1-inch discs that are spinning on top of their bases like a bunch of tiny treadmills, and then turning to match the direction that you're walking. So obviously a normal treadmill is one direction, right? Just one flat plane moving forward and spinning around, so you always know exactly where you're going. But let's say you want to build a treadmill that's responsive and can go in any direction. Well, a flat treadmill, it would be really hard, right? It would have to spin around quickly to match whatever direction you're walking, which is just kind of insane. So instead, built into the floor is a bunch of articulating cones with discs on top of them, with motors inside to spin those discs. Okay, and then the key here is the discs are tilted, so only the edge of the disc in the air is the part that's actually touching what's on the floor. So it's less of a flat treadmill and more of a bunch of small blades that are rotating under your feet. So when you walk forward, they spin clockwise to move your foot back to the middle once it's landed. And actually, when you walk backwards, they spin counterclockwise to move your foot back to the middle. So no matter where you go, whatever direction you walk, no matter how long or how fast your stride is, it'll always pull you right back to the middle. So I've seen these videos that Disney's put out of this guy walking on it, but we got to work our way up to that. You know, I've never walked on it before, and it's capable of some other things, so let's graduate, let's get there. So there are 3 ways to control this thing. There's walking on it, obviously, but there's also using a controller, like a PlayStation 5 controller, and there's also just straight up using the Force and just pointing at it with your hands. Let's start there. So first we put this Apple box on the holo tile. And there's a screen up here that shows in real time all of the inputs and what the sensors are seeing both on the floor and around the floor. And they've actually mapped anything that crosses a certain line in front of me to move whatever object is on the floor. So when I move my hand in front of that line, the program moves the floor around to match the movement of the object with the movement of my hand. And this is pretty sick. I assume everyone watching this has seen Star Wars and realizes how dope it would be to have something like this in some sort of Star Wars experience in a theme park. So this is already super cool. But then the first time I actually get to get on the holo tile myself is in a chair and with a PlayStation controller. So I am going to be in a chair where the chair is on a piece of wood, so it's just flat bottom, and then they just handed me the PlayStation controller. And, well, see for yourself.
Good. 3, 2, 1, and in.
So the left joystick is mapped to control position, and the right joystick controls rotation. So you can spin around and move around freely and actually get pretty quickly used to this thing. And if you're wondering, yes, I can steer myself completely off of the floor. It would let me. I was just kind of trying to be careful to not fling myself off the edge. But it moves so fast. So now after all that, now that I've experienced how it moves, now they're going to let me walk on the holo tile. All right, so I'm going to start with training mode, which is a fraction of the normal speed, but will still get me used to how this works. So, I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, enable.
Training mode is on. So now, slowly start to walk. I can feel them kind of wiggling a little bit, but not really moving too quickly yet, so this is normal. Oh, okay, now they're starting to move, and my feet are starting to move with the tiles. There we go. So as I slowly walk a little bit faster, a little bit more quickly, a little longer strides, I'm getting more used to the feeling of the tiles. So they designed this to be about a 2-minute process as these tiny tiles slowly speed up their responsiveness to my movements, and it was slowly turned up more and more, basically until it was at 100% real time. It's moving pretty close to full speed now, feels like. And there's obviously a learning curve, but I feel like I'm good enough at it that I can kind of walk around and not think too hard. It's good. And then there's all the data behind me in real time, showing my feet, my legs. So walking on this, I noticed a couple things. First of all, as you've heard through this video, it's pretty loud. Like, this is going to be something they definitely are going to want to work on, especially if it's something that'll be a part of a theme park someday, or maybe even in someone's home. But also, I found it fascinating. You're never actually quite walking in a perfectly straight line. Like, it can feel pretty close if your foot happens to line up along a row of discs that are all aligned in a way from the center, but other times you're just kind of gliding over the top of a bunch of these ridges and you're not moving in a perfectly straight line. I imagine a future version of this looks like a whole bunch of much smaller and more numerous discs that are just as powerful as they are, which is clearly an engineering challenge, or an Imagineering challenge. So Yeah, this takes some getting used to. I know that because I got to hang out with the inventor of the holotile, Lanny Smoot. He's been at Disney for more than 20 years. He's got more than 70 patents, including the way the BB-8 rolls around the park, the real-life lightsabers, just to name a few. He's kind of a legend. And yeah, this guy's incredible on it. He was showing me that you can have 2 people on it at once. They were playing a multiplayer racing game, like controlling a BB-8 around a course by jogging around. And it seemed to work pretty well, aside from being pretty small. Obviously, this would work better if they had more of these floor tiles. But then what I found the most crazy is using this floor with a VR headset on. So this is what you would expect it to be for VR, right? And there's been some other 360-degree treadmill type of videos I've seen, other types of inventions used for VR. And they work, but the one thing that's hard about these, and it's hard to explain through video, but the difference between what your eyes see and what your body and brain feel, that disagreement. So meaning, like, this has always been true. If you look down at your phone a lot in a moving car, right? Your eyes are seeing something still. They see your body sitting still, but then your brain and your inner ear feels you moving around, moving forward. And so the disagreement between what your eyes see and what your brain feel, that's what can give you motion sickness. That's what feels bad. And so if you think about it, it's the same thing with this moving treadmill in VR. You put the headset on, and you start walking, and your eyes see that you are walking down a moving hallway, you're moving forward, but your brain, because you're walking in place, doesn't feel that it's supposed to be moving forward. So again, there's a disagreement there. So with the holotile, I got to try putting on an Apple Vision Pro and actually walking around a 3D constructed environment. You can't see it, but I'm in like a holodeck in Star Trek or something. And I've got a harness on because it turns out this is really hard. My eyes see the movement and my legs are trying to walk forward and my feet are sliding around, but my brain thinks I'm not supposed to be moving forward. So it's confusing. It's hard to just trust it and walk. Plus there's the extra layer of sometimes it moves you backwards a little bit to the center. So I was taking all these baby steps. Meanwhile though, watch Lanny do it and he's just incredible at it. Like he had the headset on, he was walking around confidently through space, exploring a virtual world. Pretty sure it's like a virtual Disney theme park type of thing, but that's the type of thing that feels the most like the future. Just free form, exploring some huge space, walking around in the comfort of your own home maybe, and that would be amazing. And if this thing can continue to be developed, maybe, just maybe, it can get us closer to that reality someday. Either way, that is definitely dope tech. I'm glad I got to see the first version of this, and I'm very curious and excited to see future versions. Disney, please invite me back. I want to see what the future of this actually looks like. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Peace. What's up? MKBHD here. This is Spot, the Boston Dynamics robot dog. So you may recognize the name Boston Dynamics from these kind of terrifying videos from a few years ago. You might have seen these, or maybe these, part scary, part maybe a little sad videos, or even this recent video of it being spotted out in public that I tweeted with some feelings about it in 2020. But I think a lot of people, when talking about it, saw that one Black Mirror episode, which may have been loosely inspired, maybe heavily inspired by the Boston Dynamics projects, but this is dope tech, and I actually got to spend some time up in Boston with the team that actually works on this, and so here I'm going to show you everything I learned about what Spot actually is and what it can actually do right now in 2020. Okay, so what is Spot? So Spot is a quadruped robot that's basically a computer, battery, and sensors all together on top of some motors and metal and joints in the shape of legs. Does that make sense? Spot is mostly metal, so weighs around 60 pounds, pretty hefty, and it's the most refined version yet of this remote-controlled dog concept. So you can see there's 5 sets of cameras all around. There's 2 main sets in the front. We'll call that the face. And then there is a matching set on each side and a set of cameras at the butt. So each one of these cameras sees in stereo vision, and along with gyroscopes and sensors inside, all of this is feeding information to the computer at all times about how to control the motors to keep Spot balanced. So take that, then add some shoulder harnesses to pick it up, some rubber nubs for feet, and some appropriate ventilation for the computer inside, and you got yourself a robot dog. And of course, one that looks a lot more slim and friendly than previous iterations of the robot dog. Maybe the best example of that is the battery, actually. So Spot has a little interchangeable battery in the belly area. It's an 11,500 milliamp hour battery pack, and that powers Spot for around 90 minutes on a charge. But that, of course, depends on the payload weight and how much you're actually using it. Matter of fact, Spot is actually using energy here, actively balancing, even when it's just standing still. So your mileage may vary. So Spot's controller is essentially an Android tablet with some buttons and joysticks. And so it's running the Spot Android app that Boston Dynamics coded, so it can talk directly to Spot or even via a remote connection from many miles away. And honestly, the most impressive part of the controls was how easy it was. Like I got maybe a 90-second demo with the controller, and that for me was enough to know maybe 90% of the things that Spot can do right off the bat. Maybe it's because I loved RC cars, I was always into this type of thing, but it was super simple. So the left joystick moves the robot forward and backward and side to side, and the right joystick is just for rotation, clockwise or counterclockwise. So you basically combine these 2 joysticks and you can direct Spot pretty much anywhere you want him to go. The screen, as you're moving, will show the camera feed from any of the cameras you want. Of course, it's helpful to have the forward-facing camera pulled up, and that gives you a pretty good idea of where it's going. And then you can also change things like the height and the speed. So Spot likes to be about in the middle height as he's walking for efficiency and balance, but you can change that. And you have up to 3 speeds: slow, medium, or fast. Spot can go actually up to 1.4 meters per second, or about 3 miles an hour in fast mode. They've tested faster speeds, but this gate is a lot more approachable and stable and predictable. So Spot has a couple modes. Some of them are perfectly reasonable, and some of them just kind of feel like showing off. First of all, Spot can sit and turn all the motors off, of course. So when it's in sit mode, it's just chilling. You can turn it on, and then it'll go into stand mode. And in stand mode, you can move it around to look around without actually walking. And this might be when it looks the most dog-like, and it can give you a little head tilt and all this crazy stuff. But like I said, when it's standing, the motors are still on for self-balancing, and you can quickly see if a strong wind blows, or even as I literally try to push it over, it catches itself and stays on its feet. So that's stand mode. Then there's walk mode. Okay, so this is a normal walking gait that you see the most often. It's taking 1 step forward with the diagonal opposite leg, like a normal dog would walk, for example. Front left, back right, front right, back left. And this is the mode that goes up to its max speed, which is honestly faster than it sounds. Now, it is only 3 miles an hour, like I said. You can definitely still outrun it, in case you were thinking about that, but it's still impressively fast, and just the way the legs move so crazy quickly and fluidly and confidently is wild to watch. Then there's crawl mode, which is a bit slower, but it's being a little bit more careful, more deliberate. That's keeping 3 paws or feet on the ground at all times and only lifting 1 at a time. So that's useful in more loose gravel type situations and uneven terrain. Then there's a hop mode, which, okay, now that just feels like showing off. Like the robot hops back and forth between paws, 5 on one side, 5 on the other side.
That was
I don't know when you would ever need to do this. It's just more using energy and it isn't super efficient, but if you slow it down in the footage, you can actually see that Spot is completely airborne off the ground between hops, which I guess makes a cool demo. Most of Spot's time, though, I think will be spent in walk mode, where it can handle the vast majority of surfaces and pavement and all that type of stuff. Even if it's uneven, Spot walks over debris and branches and up and down hills, through shrubs, basically typically with no problem. And on flat ground, it just makes it look easy. It looks like another dog. That is until he gets to a set of stairs. Yeah, so Spot has a stairs mode. And it's really good, as you can tell. It kind of effortlessly, naturally glides up this very specific man-made creation that is a set of stairs. And it can go forward or backward. Spot doesn't really care as long as it can see where it's going. And that, to me, was really impressive. Every paw immediately went up to the next step, down to the next step, and there was never any hint of hesitation or slowing down. And this stair climbing is just a small sign of Spot's greater intelligence. Okay, so Spot is actually smarter than he seems. I am holding a controller most of the time, but that's only part of the story. So like I said at the beginning, Spot, it's a computer, and the computer is using all these sensors and cameras to build a 3D model of the world around it in real time as it's walking. That's what the computer's doing. And so because of that, it has these built-in features like obstacle avoidance and ground height detection. And they work really, really well. So basically, when these smart features are all on, pressing the joystick forward is merely a suggestion that the robot should go straight forward. But I can walk Spot right at this box, which is an obstacle, just holding the stick forward, and you can see Spot drop a shoulder and dodge it to walk around it. And that's completely on Spot's own awareness. That's the robot doing it with no extra input from me. I was just telling Spot to walk forward, and he did the rest. And the ground height detection is important too. So it's always mapping what's in front and the height of what your next step should be. So with that feature turned off, you can actually see it walking into a curb, and it kind of trips its way onto the higher ground before correcting itself. But with that feature on, it already knows to take a higher step when there's a curb in front of it. It doesn't trip at all. And if there's ever an obstacle in front of it, it's mapped out the whole thing, and it already knows how high each step should be to climb over something, like a real dog would know if it was walking over the same thing. But I will say, Spot is still a robot, and so it is, after all, not exactly perfect. Part of what they will do out here near Boston is push these robots to the limit to try to find what needs improving, to figure out what can be built better, smoother, or more consistently. So for example, one of the situational awareness areas that Spot needs the most work is object detection, because Spot's cameras have a hard time telling what objects are solid versus not so solid. So where a human would instinctively know you can't step on snow the same way as rocks or dirt versus leaves, sometimes Spot has to step on it to figure it out. So sometimes things like bushes or plants can confuse him when he thinks he can't step on them. So yeah, no robot is perfect, but you have to remember, that's the whole point of this testing. They're always pushing it to the limit to figure out how to make Spot better, and so they will often fail. What happens when Spot fails? Well, as you can see, he's gotten pretty good at this whole self-righting thing to get back up. So if he's fallen down, he can self-right. Even if he's upside down, they can flip back over. And as we saw, a lot of times he'll catch himself before he's actually fallen in the first place. So he does a pretty good job of avoiding failure, but if he does fail, he has a move to get out of it. Okay, so probably the most common question after seeing all of this is, why? Why have you created this? Why does Spot exist in the first place? And the answer, I actually think, is pretty simple. Think of it as the Mars rover for Earth. So we sent a rover to Mars because it was impossible, or at least way too risky, to send humans to Mars to do this job. But we wanted to send someone, something, to take photos, collect soil samples, take measurements, conduct a few experiments, and send the results back to Earth. So that's how we got the incredible Curiosity rover, and more recently the Perseverance rover that just launched less than a month ago and is scheduled to arrive at Mars to conduct more experiments in February of next year. So I think of SPOT as the same thing for Earth. You can send SPOT into dangerous, partially collapsed buildings, through remote tunnels, through extreme weather conditions. You can send it into a house with measuring equipment to get a measurement to see if the air has been leaking any sort of toxic gases. You can send it all sorts of places that you wouldn't want to send a human because it's too risky or they couldn't do it the same way. So you see these rails up here at the top of SPOT? That's for standardized mounting hardware. And these two rubber nubs, these are actually covers for data ports. So with the rails and ports, you can attach modules to SPOT to carry out these types of surveying, mapping, and measuring tasks. And that's what makes him so useful. Also, I'm not sure if SPOT is him or her or it. I don't know. It's a robot. Either way, SPOT has also already been useful in construction environments where clients have mapped out predetermined routes with no controller needed. So SPOT can go in this construction and take progress photos from the exact same angle and location every day for several days in a row. Like, that's something humans honestly probably wouldn't even be that good at. There's also companies working with Boston Dynamics on building modules for their own applications, and Boston Dynamics has built a few of their own, mostly involving cameras and radar and mapping software. And so SPOT is simply a vehicle that will carry these modules around, a really advanced, lifelike vehicle with 4 legs that obeys your every command. Now, if after seeing all this, you're still concerned about the potential future from that Black Mirror episode, don't worry. The people who work here have seen that episode, and they have no intention of creating or allowing a future where robots just take over the world. But it's also super crazy to think about if this is SPOT now, and this was the robot they were working on 7 years ago, what does SPOT look like in another 7 years? Or what does SPOT in 2030 look like? 2040? That's what's really exciting to me. And as it continues to get smarter and find new applications and accomplish new things, I can't help but feel a little bit proud of SPOT and how far it's come. But it truly is dope tech because of its potential for the future. And I'll certainly be keeping my eye out for it. So hey, no need to shut it down. Boston Dynamics, I like what I've seen so far. That is, so far, anyway. Thanks for watching. This entire video was edited by SPOT. No, I'm just kidding. Catch you guys in the next tech video soon. Peace. All right. The results are in. I have it here on this device. So, the award for most extra tech feature goes to the Xiaomi Smart Wireless Charging Pad. What's up? MKBHD here. Welcome back to Dope Tech, brought to you, of course, by the Dope Tech t-shirt. This one's a healthy mix of great stuff and weird stuff, mostly thanks to this guy. So Xiaomi released alongside their new Mi 10 Ultra, their really impressive phone that's also a mirror, they also released this smart wireless charging pad. And it's this pretty big pad, and it was sort of inconspicuous at first. I took it out the box. I was like, yay, cool, another wireless charging pad. But why is it smart? So then I plugged it in, and I started using it, and I got it. So this charging pad has one gimmick and one gimmick only. It's a 20-watt wireless charger, and the number one thing it does is move that coil inside to find the device you put down somewhere on the charger and line up the charging coil automatically for you. So it's this huge pad on purpose, and you can put your device down anywhere, and then you can hear the motors move the coil inside to line it up. So yeah, not gonna lie, I thought that was pretty cool when I first saw it. It's impressive that it does find the coils and line up every time, no matter where you put it down. It sort of takes away the pain of trying to line up your wireless charger perfectly every time. You just kind of slap it down anywhere and you're good. But on the other hand, that's it. That's all it does. That's the whole thing. I mean, I posted this on Twitter, and some people said that there was multiple device support, and I think that's kind of stretching the definition a little bit, because when I'm using it, I put one device down and it moves over the charging coil just like it should. Perfect, charges that. Then I put a second device down, and as long as the first one's charging, nothing happens. Really, the only thing that you could say is multiple device charging support is when it finishes charging the first one, it moves then over to the second device and starts charging that, which is cool. So a regular charging pad doesn't do that. So you can leave several things, I guess, in theory, on this pad overnight, and it'll eventually get all of them charged for you, but it's not charging more than one thing at once. Either way though, not gonna lie, I kind of love this thing. It's 20 watts is good enough for me. It's not super fast charging, but that's a high enough rate, and I just kind of leave this thing on my desk now, and I just slap my phone down whenever I just need a couple extra % battery, and eventually it'll have me covered. That's pretty dope. All right, so next up is this little box right here. This guy is called the Hachi Infinite M1. So Hachi reached out and they wanted to sponsor a spot in a Dope Tech episode, and they sent over this box, and it's a projector, and I'm really glad they did. Now, projectors usually pretty boring, right? But this one, I can confidently say this is definitely the smartest projector I have ever seen. So this one has a Snapdragon 670 inside, has up to 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage, and it runs Android 9.0, but customized into a UI they call Infinite OS. So it's basically a whole Android tablet inside this guy. And then you can see, aside from the projection, it's got cameras and there's sensors at the front and the top, plus a gyroscope inside keeping track of its orientation. So the way this thing is angled, basically you can put it up against a wall and it'll project up to the wall, or you can put it up against a flat surface like a desk or a table, and it'll project down onto the table. Once you do, it'll automatically sort of start to calibrate itself and sharpen it up, and once it's done, you have your projection. But here's the catch. It's a touchscreen projection. So this 10-point multi-touch element kind of unlocks this giant tablet experience anywhere you can find a flat surface, which you'll start to realize is like all over the place. And it's actually a lot more responsive than I thought it would be. Maybe it's because I've tried some pretty garbage, gimmicky versions of this in the past, but this one is really good. Basically, the limitation is you still got to make sure you're not casting a shadow on the element you actually want to touch. So if you want to hit this button, for example, don't block the light from above it. You just got to come from the other side of the light and touch it, and it works perfectly. But once you get the hang of that, it's all green light. You can literally play multiplayer games 1v1 against people, whether it's tic-tac-toe or board games or Pong or air hockey. We've tried all of them, and they all work. And on top of all that, it's got a built-in battery, so the thing's pretty portable, so you don't have to find a plug everywhere you go. You can be on a train, basically, and just plop this thing down and start using it like a tablet. So now you can basically turn any surface into a giant gaming controller without the need of a phone or a tablet. I'm sure you've played Pong before, but you've probably never played it on your kitchen counter or on a table. And then in the OS, there's some other dedicated AI integrated apps they've built with different themes. For example, there's an education feature where you can use physical objects, like actual plastic letters, to teach spelling because it uses image recognition from the cameras to tell if you've spelled something right or wrong. There's a kitchen feature called Future Kitchen that lets you project recipes onto your kitchen counter, for example, or your cutting board, and it guides you through cooking them on your counter. And it'll even use that camera to recognize ingredients you scan. There's also even a fitness app where in one direction it points the workout program video onto the wall, and then on the other side is the camera facing you, and it helps correct your form and count your reps and track your body. So really interesting stuff that's been benefiting from the AI engine in the Snapdragon 670 chip, and it just got me thinking about projectors in a way I honestly never did before. So it is pretty expensive at the site. It's linked below. It's $9.99. So basically the value proposition is you can either get one really nice projector that only does one thing, which is just sit in one room and project an image on a wall, or you can get this sort of like Swiss Army knife smart projector, touchscreen, AI-focused, image-recognizing tablet thing that you can take anywhere. And I think that qualifies as dope tech. Okay, last but not least is this guy. This is Samsung's iPad Pro killer. That's being a bit generous, but hear me out. So this is the Galaxy Tab S7 Plus. It's an Android tablet. And so this is the bigger one. There's two, the Galaxy Tab S7 and S7 Plus. And this guy, you know, Android tablets used to be a lot more popular than they are now. There just isn't that much competition in the Android tablet space right now. But this one, as far as premium Android tablets goes, has a lot of good stuff going for it. Like, it's got the high-end specs, the Snapdragon 865 Plus, which makes it 5G capable, and there's up to 8 gigs of RAM and half a terabyte of storage. And the design, I think, is nice. It's a really thin tablet, probably thinner than the phone you're using right now, but it's metal, it's got sharp edges, and it still fits quality quad speakers in all four corners and a 10,090 milliamp hour battery, so it is not a poor use of space. And then you get a bunch of little things too. There's dual cameras, one 12 megapixel primary and one 5 megapixel ultra wide, and they're pretty good. They don't have to be great because they're tablet cameras, but they are definitely functional. And in fact, the camera you'll probably use more often on a tablet is the front-facing camera, which is up here in the middle of landscape mode, which I love because most of the time you're using a tablet like this, it's gonna be sideways, it's in landscape mode. Samsung knows this and puts the webcam in the better place, unlike the iPad. That's actually also why the fingerprint reader is over here on the right-hand side, because you hold it sideways and double tap and unlock it just like that, easy. And the bezels are thin, but not too thin, because if you're holding a tablet, you do need some place to put your thumbs down and actually hold the thing. So it's got just the right amount of thickness to hold that bezel and not touch the screen. It's just an overall really nice design. My favorite quirk, though, is the S Pen it comes with. So this is the new and improved S Pen. It's got all the same improved technologies from the Galaxy Note series. It's the new 9 millisecond response time, all that fun low latency stuff. But I say quirk because it's kind of like they saw what the iPad Pro did with the Apple Pencil and said, oh, we like that. Do you mind if we copy that, but sort of make it look like we changed it up a little bit? And so that's how we ended up with this. They copied Apple's homework, but changed it up just a little bit. So the S Pen only attaches and charges this certain way. So it's got to have the tip facing the cameras and in just the right spot. And the magnets are nice, but they just aren't quite as strong, so I can't do it blind as easily as the iPad. Maybe if I used it for longer, I'd get a better hang of it, but it just feels like it should be a little bit stronger. And when you lay it down without the case, now that it's on the back, it kind of props it up a bit because of the pen. Like, is that what they wanted? I don't know. The case for it really is one of the best accessories you should get for this tablet. But the reason the Tab S7 Plus makes dope tech is because of this screen. This is the best screen on any tablet, including the iPad. It's a 12-inch, 16 by 10, 120 hertz Super AMOLED display. It gets super bright, the colors are excellent, and everything on this screen, whether it's videos or photos or games, whatever it is, it just looks super sharp and vibrant. I mean, this is seriously a great screen, which I guess we'd expect nothing less from a high-end Samsung product. Oh, and yes, this also does use the full Quad HD resolution and 120 hertz at the same time. I mean, it is a tablet, but it's still nice to see. This screen, like if you want a media machine, if you watch a lot of YouTube, Netflix, whatever you do, like this is the screen you want to do it on. And it's lightweight enough that you can carry it around, watch it on a plane. This is the one. So this is dope tech just because of the screen. Now it is still an Android tablet, so you're gonna have a lot of partially unoptimized, weirdly vertical, not quite right apps. And if you're willing to deal with that, because that's part of the Android tablet experience, then the rest of this package might be interesting to you. But I mean, come on. This screen is awesome. So that's about it. That wraps up this dope tech. Some pretty good stuff here. But hey, if you have other suggestions for stuff you want to see in dope tech in the future, now's a good time to leave a comment in the comments section, because there's a whole wide world out there of great stuff and weird stuff and quirky stuff, and I would like to feature it on the channel. I think it's a lot of fun. So thanks for watching this episode, and we'll catch you guys later. Peace. So this is Cleo, and as you can probably immediately tell, Cleo is an awesome dog. She's one of the nicest dogs I've ever met. She loves people, anyone that'll give her any food. She's pretty classic dog stuff, and she also happens to be missing her right leg. She was found on Pet Finder after she spent some time as a stray in Oklahoma with injuries from unknown causes. Now, hanging out with Cleo and just playing with her, like, you'd almost forget, like, you wouldn't even know that she's missing a leg because she's just running around, chasing stuff, playing fetch, loves being outdoors, all that classic dog stuff. But although she appears super healthy now, dogs that are missing limbs and any pets that are missing limbs are actually more likely to have things like arthritis and joint problems in their other limbs later in life because they're compensating for the missing limb. So she's running around being awesome now, but it would be ideal for her long-term to be supported. So that's where this company called 3D Pets comes in. So they reached out and they were telling me they have a particularly high-tech solution to the problem and asked if I basically wanted to go see it. And it turns out it is pretty sick. I mean, I've already talked about this before, but there's tech in everything. Like every story, every angle, everything I see on the news nowadays, it has some tech in it. But even this story surprised me at just how much tech was involved in helping dogs like Cleo. So it's this multi-step process. First up is the scan. So the pet comes into their studio, which is actually in New Jersey, pretty close to our video studio, and they actually use a smartphone to 3D scan the animal. So the idea is to take a few scans. They actually use the iPhone's LiDAR scanner or use the True Depth camera system or both. This isn't exactly what they were designed for, but with apps like Combed and Hedges, it is a pretty clever solution for just basic measuring. So basically, once you get Cleo to hold still for long enough, you can get a pretty decently accurate scan of her dimensions. You know, how high off the ground she is, how far around, the shape of the prosthesis, what that needs to be, etc. And all of this is to be used in the next step, which is 3D printing the prosthesis, which is crazy. Now, you might be thinking, like I was at the beginning of this, wait a second, why is there so much tech being used in this process? Like, why is it 3D scanning the animal and then 3D printing the prosthesis? What's going on here? And the real answer, as they explained it to me, basically is because every single animal's situation is a little bit different. No two are exactly the same, whether it's the reason that they lost the limb or part of the limb, but then just like the size of the animal, how big are they? How far off the ground does the limb end? How much weight are they going to be able to put on it? All these different things are slightly different for every single animal, kind of like a fingerprint. So clearly you can't just mass produce one size fits all prosthetic. Obviously, even with humans, you know this is already true. But the idea is you want it to be as custom and bespoke and comfortable for every single animal as possible. So this 3D printing process allows for rapid reiteration and making a couple different versions till you get it exactly right. And so this is why they're doing it this way. 3D Pets in particular, they've worked with over 300 different animals so far at their studio. They actually start with a candidacy form on their website, but then once they get going, they have a ton of options. To date, they've done many dogs as pets, but also some ducks, a tortoise, a pig. They had a goat recently that was missing part of its skull that didn't form properly, and you know, goats like to use their heads for stuff, obviously, so they made a helmet for him. And one elephant leg recently. So anyway, Cleo's scan, pretty straightforward, and within 5 minutes they have a couple decently accurate models to work with, and then they import it into the computer to move to step 2. So how do you get the scan off the phone?
Well, that's the easy part. We get the scan off the phone onto our web portal, which we're able to bring into a custom design software here, where that's really where the magic happens, right? Where we're able to take a design and really mold it to the 3D scan of each pet so that we can make sure everything's fitting perfect.
So this is Cleo's scan.
Right.
And the appropriate fit as it would be built on the scan.
Right, so you can see the scan overlaid, and you know, we can patch things up as needed. It's almost like 3D Photoshop in a way, but then we're able to control the lattice, where the hardware mounts, where the straps go. We can really position everything perfect to each pet. And then once we're happy, once it's set, then we bring it into another software where this is where we optimize it for printing. Okay. So we have to be able to basically give the printer instruction on what to make. So this is where we really fine-tune the intricacies and the detail of each layer. Because again, we want some areas to be nice and rigid, where hardware mounts, for example, but like around the rib cage, around the lungs, we want the flexibility, so you can see we don't have that thick lattice there. This over here, these wings, we can really easily bend. Even if the dog fluctuates in weight, we want it to accommodate those changes. But where the mount is, where the hardware is on this end, this we want to be really sturdy and strong, because that's where the impact is. So once we're happy with this, once it's ready to go, we'll take it over to one of the 3D printers, and we have a whole bunch of different sizes depending on the case, depending on the animal. So,
okay.
But they're all pretty similar in how they work.
So 3D printing, to be perfectly honest, I never really cared that much about 3D printing. This is like a confession. Like there's a ton of hype about it, and obviously a lot of people care a lot about it, but every time it was brought up to me, I couldn't really find a reason to care. And we got a 3D printer at the studio, and we've printed a couple random trinkets here and there, mostly things that are just like useless stuff just to see if it'll work. Whatever, neat. But this is the first time I've seen a situation where 3D printing clearly makes the most sense for a manufacturing process. Obviously, you can't do one single mold. You can't do one size fits all. So like I said, it just made the most sense for once. They have a couple different size printers in here, ranging from something like an Anker M5, something you might buy on Amazon, all the way up to an industrial sized one, the size of a refrigerator, basically to work on different sized pieces for different animals. So once they were happy with Cleo's design of the prosthesis in the software, it hits the printer, and about literally 24 hours later, it's done. It's printed, the whole thing. Now, this isn't the final step for hers. There is still a sanding down process to soften the corners and make it as comfortable as possible. And also in 3D printing, there's commonly these support pieces that you get when you print oddly shaped objects that need to be cut off. And they're actually working on ways to melt that down and use it in other things like wheels or feet, so they can actually be resourceful about that as well. But they've showed me a bunch of examples of various shapes and sizes of things they've printed for animals in the past.
So this one is just about ready to ship out. This dog has a residual limb, so we have this build out here, and we do it like this so that we can keep the weight-bearing load right below where the limb used to be.
Yeah.
If we have it in any other place, they just won't be able to walk correctly.
And this is also now softened down, and is it just sanded basically?
We do a sand and torch.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll basically burn the material back like what the machine is doing, heating it up to a melting temperature.
Okay.
It smooths it out. And something that we're very well known for with our devices are our feet. And so one of the biggest things is when the dogs are taking steps, you want that foot to be able to compress to absorb that impact.
True. Yep.
I'll trade you. I think this is version like 5 or 6 of the foot.
Okay.
And we're on version like 10 or 12 of the harness. So they're constantly changing and adapting. If somebody reaches out to us and they say, I burned through a foot, here are the reasons why, we're going to make the changes to the foot so that stops happening. And so that's why we go through our variations. We're actually working on the next version of the foot, which has rounder edges, so more of a radius on these edges.
Like a tire, maybe?
Yeah, exactly like a tire, because dogs tend to lean on one side or the other, and we'll typically have the owners flip it around once they start to wear on one side so it wears evenly.
Tire rotation.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
A foot rotation.
That's funny.
And then behind you we have some of our carts that are in process too.
Yeah.
So this is one going down to a dog in Texas. She's got 2 deformed limbs. In fact, one is really not formed at all, but she's got one deformed here on the left-hand side. So we make provisions for that so that the shoulders can still move around. So this will get 3 6-inch wheels on each corner. And then this is another good example. This is for a dachshund that has 1 full remaining leg and had a partial amputation. And so the owners didn't want something extremely bulky, but they wanted that front leg to have support, because dachshunds have a lot of back problems.
Yeah.
So we designed this specifically for this case where the dachshund can put its legs and move it and still have the support on the outer edges. And we still have our flexible harness here. And the wheels can change camber as well too. So depending on
sport mode. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll go up to 8 or 10-inch wheels. I think you saw this one.
Got Escalade dogs?
We should do spinners on one of these rims one of these days, honestly. That would be fantastic.
Amazing.
We actually, I haven't put it past people. The woman that we did our original dachshund cart for, she saw our black wheels and she was like, I'd like silver rims, please. And I thought she was joking. I totally thought she was joking. And I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. She's like, no, really, I want silver wheels.
Would you paint it, or would you?
We ended up painting it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, Cleo's scan was pretty good. Then they designed her prosthesis around that scan. That went great. Then they printed it sanded it and torched it down, and matched it with the leg for her height. The only step left now is to see how it works. So what I kind of didn't realize is it's not just like you attach the prosthesis to the dog and then they just magically start running around perfectly like they've had it their whole life. But no, like anyone who's had crutches knows this, there's actually an adjustment process as you get more and more used to it. So I got to watch Cleo sort of learn in real time, even in just these few minutes, go from hovering it off the ground to eventually starting to trust it. And the process of them getting used to it, depending on the pet, is basically to introduce them to more and more time per day with it so that they eventually get used to totally living with it. Maybe 20 minutes a day at the beginning, then it's an hour a day, then 2 hours a day, and you slowly see them start to remap their muscle memory and unlearn walking without the limb and really trust it and depend on it by the end. So at the end of the day, I thought this was super cool, and basically it's a huge win for pets like Cleo, and it's also super cool that it's enabled by tech that feels relatively accessible, like the phone in our pocket, a computer app, 1 or 2 pieces of software, and then 3D printers, like all things that we can get started with. That's how they got started with building this studio in New Jersey and actually helping so many pets. And they actually now will continue to evolve this. There's other places around the country and the world doing the same sort of thing, but they potentially can do remote creations for pets that don't come to the studio, but they get to like send a mold in and then build a prosthesis for other animals they don't even get to see. I'm not even gonna pretend to be an expert on 3D printing or prosthesis, but like hopefully this helps more animals sort of extend their lives and live more freely, I think is the right word. These pieces are typically priced from a couple $100 to up to $1,000 or $2,000, and ideally will last a lifetime, at least if they've stopped growing. So thanks to 3D Pets for letting me pull back the curtain a little bit into how they use tech to do what they do. Thanks to Cleo for letting me hang out all day, and thanks to you for watching. See you in the next one. Peace. Hey, what's up guys? MKBHD here. Welcome back to Dope Tech. I'm your host, Marques Brownlee. Dope Tech videos used to have a theme. Yes. Does this video have any sort of theme at all? Absolutely not. This is 3 completely unrelated items. They have nothing to do with each other. And I'm going to take that as a sort of a challenge to make the best segues between each of them, like a Linus-inspired game of high-tech chain reaction. So, let's begin. Okay, so I tweeted a picture of these not too long ago, and a lot of you had questions, understandably. What is going on with these hilariously huge AirPods? So these are the 3X pods. And I don't know why they call them 3X, because they're clearly a lot bigger than 3 times the size of AirPods, but they are Bluetooth speakers modeled after AirPods Pro. They are the size of a camera and a lens, maybe, or like a really big coffee mug. The point is, they're hilariously big, and weirdly enough, even though they definitely don't go in your ears, even if you are Shaq's size, they still have rubber tips so that if you wanted to put them in an elephant's ears or something, they would have a somewhat comfortable fit, I guess. So a couple things you may be wondering about them. One, yes, there is a black and a white version. They do pair quickly and easily via Bluetooth. And on that stem, you can see there's a couple controls, a power switch, some playback controls, a microphone, and sadly, a micro USB charging port. And you can also play music from these from built-in FM radio, a USB flash drive, or a TF card. Yeah, I had to look that up too. It's called a trans flash card, which is basically the same thing as micro SD. And they sound like... You're not buying these for how they sound. Come on. These, if you are wondering, they sound pretty bad, actually. They have very, very little bass. They don't get very loud. Maybe they are kind of sounding like giant AirPods. There are other speakers of this size that cost around the same amount that get twice as loud and sound much better. You're not getting these for the sound. But really, this is much more about the novelty factor. I mean, look at them. How is this not an amazing conversation starter? Just sitting on a shelf in your living room. You pick these up, they're super lightweight, and then just the fact that they actually function as speakers and all the sound comes from where you'd expect them to is pretty sweet. Now I just want you to know, before you go out and buy these, they are $40 right now on their site. So I guess I should expect this, but they are super cheaply built, and you can feel it immediately. You can tell. It says on their site that they are 3D printed, but I don't really know if I believe that. There are seams all over the thing. There are screws. The grills that match the metal on the AirPods are just stickers. But even if they are 3D printed, it doesn't seem to help the actual build quality. So don't buy these for the build quality. Don't buy these for the sound quality. Buy these for the immense flex that not only do you have AirPods Pro, but now you also have the gigantic 50 times size AirPods Pros that actually function, which is wild. Although minus the noise cancellation. Actually, what's funny is when they ship these, you get a black and a white, but they're both left AirPods. But what they should have done, what they should do is give you one right, one left, and then have them pair up in stereo mode and let you really get into it. But maybe they'll save that for the second gen version. Speaking of the second gen version, this is the second gen Asus Zephyrus Duo. Okay, so you might remember we already had a dual screen Asus laptop in a Dope Tech video less than a year ago. That was the first gen one. And I think we can agree the main complaint about that first version was that screen up against the keyboard was kind of hard to see. It was a little off axis, and that's hard for any display. And then light would reflect off of it, and you know, it was a matte finish and everything, but that was the problem with it. So boom, problem solved. So this is basically a sequel, and you can see they've built this actually pretty simple hinge that every time you open the laptop, the second screen also rises up out of the laptop and tilts towards you a bit for improved visibility. And it works. And it's a sturdy hinge too, so since it's still a 4K touchscreen, still has a matte finish, it just is that much more likely that you'll actually use it now that you can actually see it more and you don't have to strain your neck to look down at that screen. So it's smart design, and it also has now this bonus of a little bit of air can flow through the back there for cooling, which is nice. And there's also the speakers down there. And then, yeah, all the same stuff that I said about that first one, about how awesome it is to have a dual screen computer, that of course applies to this one again too. It's like the touch bar on steroids, all the multitasking capabilities. But also, keep in mind, there are still all the weird quirks that come from this unconventional form factor too. Like the fact that there's no palm rest built into the laptop from the keyboard being pushed so far down, like the tiny mouse pad, if you actually use it without a mouse. The power plug is also kind of in a weird place in the middle of the left-hand side, which I thought was curious. And the battery life also still takes a hit, since obviously you're powering 2 4K screens now instead of 1. It is a 90 watt-hour battery, but you'll notice the battery depleting much more quickly if you have brightness up on both screens like I usually do. But hey, I'm happy to see Asus really doubling down on this concept that was already pretty sweet in the first version and really working to improve it. And this new laptop also has great specs. It's an unlocked 8-core CPU. It has an RTX 2080 Super Max Q, 32 gigs of RAM, solid state storage. It's definitely a capable machine, and they're not shy about what it is capable of, but I think the coolest part is that Asus is listening and is making stuff like this. And I think possibly the most telling part about how they expect you to use this laptop is in the ports layout. So like I said, power plug is on the left-hand side. That's along with the mic and headphone jacks. 2 full-size USB and 1 USB Type-C on the right-hand side. And then in the middle of the back, there's USB, Ethernet, and HDMI, which is pretty perfect if you're going to use it as a desktop replacement. That's the type of stuff you'd run down the back of your desk while attaching the whole thing to a monitor, which, boom, brings us to our third and final item. That was smooth. This is the Samsung Odyssey G9 49-inch ultra-wide gaming monitor. This thing is ridiculous in so many ways. So everything about this monitor is to the limits, okay? First of all, it comes in this box, this insane box, and then it's a 49-inch diagonal monitor, so biggest monitor I've ever used, and then it's at a 5120 by 1440 resolution, so 5K wide, which doesn't make it the first monitor of that resolution, but I do believe this is the first one we've seen at a 240 hertz refresh rate with HDR 1000 certification, thanks to QLED. So it gets crazy bright if you need it to. It has a 1 millisecond response time. It supports NVIDIA G-Sync over DisplayPort 1.4, and it's curved, massively curved. So curved monitors, there's different levels of the amount of curve you can have. This monitor is what's called a 1000 radius curve, which just means basically if you put these monitors into a circle till they all connected, the radius of that circle would be 1000 centimeters, which without any context doesn't really mean anything. But what they're trying to tell you with that number is it is very, very curved around that center point, and so it sticks out a lot from the base as a result. Apparently the curve matches the human eye. The bottom line is the experience you get sitting in front of this thing, right in the middle, right up close, using it, and especially gaming on it, is one of maximum immersion. I've never had a monitor get into my peripheral so much. And then it checks most of the rest of the other boxes from a high-end monitor. There's 2 DisplayPort, 1 HDMI, and a USB hub and audio jack around the back there. DisplayPort is definitely the best way to get the most out of this monitor. I also kind of wish there was USB Type-C Samsung, as long as we're trying to check all the boxes, but it doesn't have that. And then also around the glossy white back, you can turn on the RGB lights in the middle and this thing glows. It's pretty sick. It's kind of like this infinity void. Even though you never have to really look at the back of your monitor, at least you know it's there, and hey, maybe you get a little spillover onto the wall behind it. But what's actually nice about this back, besides the cable management, is this headphone holder. Because even though it is kind of hard to reach behind a huge monitor like this, it's nice that they thought about that and put something back there, because when you have this monitor on your desk, it's really hard to have anything else on your desk. So that is the price you pay for this huge, vast expanse of a screen. But hey, a lot of people looking at this right now are thinking, you know what? That's worth it. I want this. So if you are one of those people who literally wants to buy this, along with anything else mentioned in this dope tech, below the like button, I'll leave all the links to everything. This you'll find is $1,700, which is definitely expensive for a monitor. Costs more than the equivalent of like buying 2 separate 27-inch 240 hertz monitors. But I mean, the badass factor of having it all in one unit, the lack of a bezel in the middle, the HDR certification, the QLED, the image, the curve, it's kind of hard to match this. Now for me personally, like I've gamed on this a bit. I've never been a huge ultra-wide person. I need the vertical pixels when most of the work I'm doing requires vertical scrolling. So ultra-wides are ultra-wide. They've never really been very tall. So 1440p, not enough pixels vertically for me, but for gaming, I mean, this thing is incredible, and that's why it's dope tech. So that is the Samsung Odyssey G9. This has been dope tech. I hope the segues were up to par for at least what I set the expectations to be at the beginning of this video. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace. So every sport has some sort of tech involved in the show somewhere now, right? Like tennis has the famous replay in or out graphic. American football has the digital line of scrimmage we all know. And football has this sweet new offsides graphic. And golf has this, the shot tracer. So some of you who've been subscribed for a long time already know this, but many of you also don't. I am a golfer. I've been golfing for a long time, longer than I've been doing like anything else. My first ever YouTube upload before any other tech videos was a couple of golf videos, believe it or not.
I'm back. Nice ball. Really dry.
But I do still watch golf all the time. And of course, after doing that Formula 1 video, my brain is in tech in sports mode, and I'm realizing the amount of technology hidden in plain sight on a golf course that makes a broadcast possible is actually insane. There's cameras, there's also lasers, there's radar, LiDAR, optical fiber cables. There's volunteers carrying Samsung phones with a custom app installed on them. There's so much happening here, but why? And when you think about it, there's really one good reason for all of this stuff going on, which is golf is hard to watch for a lot of the same reasons that Formula 1 is hard to watch. Like this sport, it's not just like, it's not one basketball court where all the action's happening in the same place at the same time. It's 18 different courts all spread around hundreds of yards away from each other, all with different action happening on them at the same time, with a tiny little white ball flying through the air that's like impossible to see. So when you're not physically at the golf course, there's basically 3 ways to watch golf, each requiring more technology than the last. There's the TV broadcast, there's the website portal, and then there's the Vision Pro. So the TV broadcast, it's the most simple, right? But there's still this flagship problem of the golf ball being tiny and basically invisible as soon as it gets hit. And so that problem was solved with the shot tracer. Now, a lot of people don't actually know how this gets made. Like, it's not a computer drawing a trace of like where it kind of sees the golf ball going. It's not an AI prediction of anything. It's actually very precisely measured accurately. So if you've ever been around a golf course or looking at a broadcast during a tournament, you'll notice there are a ton of these little towers here. Well, they're not so little towers sometimes too, but these towers are strategically placed all the way around the golf course, behind the tee boxes, around the fairways, and behind the greens so that they're covering the entire golf course. And every single one of these towers has three things: a camera, a TrackMan, and a wireless transmitter. So this TrackMan right here, this is the special thing. This is the radar system used to measure the exact launch speed and angle and spin rates of the golf ball the instant it's contacted by a golf club. And then here's the thing, once that gets measured, instantly the computers know everything about how that golf ball is going to fly through the air. As soon as you touch the ball, how high it'll go, how far it'll go, how much it'll turn, and all of that will be even more useful in the next level. But for this TV broadcast, from the launch data, they can immediately project a shot shape line overlaid onto the hole using the angle from the fixed camera that's sitting right behind the tee box, and immediately get that data back to the broadcast trucks. Now, the crazy part is, if you look around enough, you will see these things like all over the golf course. They're hidden in plain sight, basically. Some of them are right next to the golfers at the tee box. Some of them are actually strapped up to TV towers. And it's not just the tee boxes. The TrackMan launch monitors actually face backwards from behind the green too, so they can pick up launch data from all kinds of shots from the fairway. It's super impressive. And then all of these towers that I got to check out, turns out they're all completely battery powered and can last for an entire day of a tournament. And then also this skirt around the bottom is actually covered in solar panels too. So they're basically feeding into themselves and they never run out of power during the day. All of this is to just give us the shot tracer that makes golf on TV dramatically easier to watch. Now, sometimes you can't always watch golf on TV. You know, maybe you're at work or maybe you're somewhere else where you can't be in front of a TV, but you got another tab open just so you can keep an eye on the PGA Tour website so you can see what's happening. Lucky for you, they have built this thing out. So the website now has this entire real-time play-by-play portal where you can jump around to any hole and see exactly what's happening when it happens. And then when the tournament is happening, every shot is updated in real time. But what I didn't realize until seeing it in person is just how far they go to deliver all of these shots as soon as possible. So check this out. So there's a few more pieces of tech on the golf course that you should know about. First of all, there are these on fairway cameras covering the whole course. And basically, they're like that tower that I showed you on the tee box earlier, but it doesn't need any TrackMan on it. It's just cameras, and they're pointed everywhere. And then there are also volunteers stationed alongside every hole with laser rangefinders and tablets. So they've got this nice little setup to be able to quickly tag a ball as soon as it lands and then upload its exact location. So here's how it all works. Ready? So a golfer is up on the tee box. They're about to hit their first shot. You've loaded up the website. Remember how I said those radar trackers can compute exactly what the ball is going to do the second the club impacts the ball? Well, okay, perfect. So that data is shot over to the ShotLink trailer in the parking lot where they have the feeds from all the cameras all over the golf course. And this is the crazy part. The second the shot gets hit, that system is already projecting a polygon on the course where it thinks that ball is going to end up. You can actually see it right here, outlined in yellow. Then a few seconds later, boom, the ball lands and rolls right into that box. It's so sick. So then the volunteer with the laser and the tablet will laser the ball and get its exact location just to confirm that, upload it, boom, it immediately shows up on the tour website. Literally within 3 seconds of the ball coming to rest, it is updated. It's pretty impressive. And the craziest part to me was seeing this system at work, like predicting where the ball is going to land. Again, before it even lands, as soon as they hit the ball, it is accounting for obviously the launch angle, the spin, the speed, but also things like the wind, the temperature, the humidity, your elevation, and all of that stuff to give you that polygon for probability for where the ball is probably going to end up. Now, obviously it won't be perfect, especially if the ball does something unexpected, like hits a tree or a bird or something, but that's why you have the volunteer down on the course with the laser just to finalize everything and hit submit. And they told me it actually calibrates itself over time, this system. So every 10 shots, it dials in even more. And I actually saw that happen in real time. I watched more shots during the course of the day. Some of the earlier shots would be just slightly off, and then some of the shots later in the day would be fixed, and they'd be nearly perfect. And then there's actually one more piece of tech out there on the golf course that I haven't even mentioned yet, and that is following every single group of golfers as they're playing the tournament, you will be able to spot one person holding a phone. And at this tournament, the travelers, they were pretty easy to find because they were all wearing pink shirts. So what are they doing exactly, you might be asking? Well, I got my hands on exactly what they're doing. Turns out every single one of them is holding the same phone. It's a Samsung Galaxy X Cover 6, a pretty ruggedized phone, which makes sense for outdoors. But what they're doing is keeping official scores for the online scorecard, and their fingerprint is in charge of closing the betting windows for people who are online gambling, basically in real time on specific shots. So they literally hold their fingerprint down on this screen until the moment a player starts their backswing, then they release it to close the betting window. Here you can see them doing exactly that. Wait for the player to hit, wait patiently, and then there it goes. The shot gets hit, and then whoever is betting on that specific shot, whether it's hitting the fairway or hitting the green or whatever, that's the moment it's locked in. So, you remember when the Vision Pro first came out and there were all those mock-ups of all these cool apps and experiences that people wanted to happen? I talked about how the ideas for the apps were ahead of the apps themselves. One of them was Formula One. Somebody built this whole dream F1 watching setup with like the broadcast up top and then this little mini map of the cars on the track down below. It looks so sick, but it turns out that that wasn't real. It was just a mock-up that no one had actually made yet. Except for the PGA Tour, it turns out. Because the PGA Tour's Apple Vision Pro app, it's insane. It's the same idea and it actually works. So they've got the leaderboard up top, a broadcast feed and some other things if you want, but then at the bottom, in real time, you can have a mini map of any hole on the course with an extremely accurate map of the hole that's stitched together from, yes, an entire team of drones that fly over the course and map it out a couple of days before the tournament. All right, so once they've got all the drone footage imported and stitched it all together, this is the result. So this is literally on their computer. But this is a flyover of, this is the 10th hole, 456-yard par 4, and right away you can see tons of details. There's all the other houses on the property. There's all the obvious things like the tee boxes and the fairway, but you see every single tree. There's the iconic tree in the middle of the fairway. You keep going, you can see the cart path, you can see where the hole is on the green, you can see even things like the TV tower, and you flip it around, you can see where the stands are on behind a tree, you can see everything. So this is as close of a representation of that hole as you can possibly get for all 18 holes, and since it's so detailed, you can look at the green and see how tilted it is. This is a pretty flat green, so there's not a whole lot of elevation change, but they've got these little, I mean, this looks like 2K. You can see the little rolling meters for where it rolls off. It's extremely accurate. So 18 of those. So yeah, as this tournament is actually happening, this is what it looks like. It's basically a combination of all the technologies we've seen through this whole experience, level 1, 2, and now 3. You see the broadcast in all its glory. You see the scoreboard getting updated in real time. And then you have this full overhead view of any hole on the course that you can actually look around and watch the shot flying through the air. And these are the actual shot shapes. Like if a player hits a low shot, it will be a low shot in this visual. If they hit a draw or a fade or a high shot, it shows all of that too, because the launch monitor knows all of this stuff. So this feels like a really futuristic way to watch golf. I thought it was super cool. Now again, similar to Formula One, they're at a new location every single week for every new tournament, so it is a massive logistical challenge to put all of this stuff onto the course and get it all together. Matter of fact, just seeing everything they have to bring in, from the dozens of trailers to the 10 to 20 miles of fiber running all over the golf course to the drone footage mapping out every hole, and of course the grandstands and the scoreboards and the TrackMan towers and the TV towers all over the golf course. Like, they can't do this for every single tournament, but they do try for as many of the larger high-profile events as possible. So it was sick to watch this event in person and then go back and see how golfers hit certain shots and how it looks on the broadcast and then in the Vision Pro, and just to get to see how it's represented for people who aren't there. Because for every sport, the broadcast is so important. It's really only 1% or less of the people actually watching are the ones there in person, but basically for everyone else, they get to know the sport through the broadcast, through the media. And that's what's so cool about it. And that's always evolving over time. I don't know if you remember, maybe 30 years ago, the NHL tried something interesting with a glowing puck. This was like the mid-90s. They tried to make it easier for people to watch the broadcast and follow the puck around. It was well-intentioned, but obviously pretty tough execution, even though it's still like kind of cool for 30 years ago. Nowadays, the tech is so refined and so precise that you can track a tiny white ball through the air over 3 football fields at a time within a couple yards of margin of error. And it is definitely an improvement. All this, of course, at the end of the day is to put on a great show, make a great followable broadcast, and for the golfers to go out and compete and to try to win the tournament, and at the end of the season to try to win this, the FedEx Cup, the precious end-of-the-year prize. And I touched it. I touched the FedEx Cup. Pretty sick. So yeah, shout out again to the PGA Tour for making this video possible, for pulling back the rope and letting us see the behind the scenes. Nobody gets to see this stuff, but now you have. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Peace. All right, welcome back to Dope Tech. It has been too long. It's been more than a year since the last Dope Tech video, but I love this series. I've made more than 30 of them. I've shown off more than 100 products in various ways through Dope Tech, and I just feel like we should be getting back to this. So something I've noticed while we were heads down in busy season and all the smartphones and all the brand new stuff is there are a couple things that I missed during this year, but those things were often successors to previous gadgets that I've also already talked about on this channel, things that I've had in Dope Tech before. So this is Dope Tech Revisited. Everything that I'm showing in this Dope Tech is a follow-up to something that I have previously showed some older version of on Dope Tech in the past, so we can see if it's still dope, if it's gotten better since it came out, or worse, and how it measures up. Also, thanks to Google for sponsoring a portion of this video. More on that later. So first up, the goated productivity mouse, the Logitech MX Master. Now, I've personally been using the MX Master since the first one, and actually even before that when it was called the Performance MX, but it first appeared in Dope Tech 6 years ago as the MX Master 3 with a bunch of other stuff, but it was actually the most replayed part of that video. Since then, they've also come out with MX Master 3S, and then this is MX Master 4. So the benefit of having such a popular mouse is Logitech basically gets tons of data on how we use our mice, the things we like about it, the things we don't like about it, and then they can make iterative improvements over and over again on each one. And so this one, the 4, I've noticed has some bigger changes, but still keeps that formula and feels familiar. So it's still a great size, still a great shape, for righties anyway. But you know, a lot of older MX Masters, you might see end up looking kind of crummy after a few years because of the rubberized finish that they all have. Well, Logitech noticed that. So this one should avoid all that because it's an entirely new plastic finish. Now, obviously plastic has a negative connotation, but in certain products, it just makes sense, like headphones and computer mice. So there's no finish to wear off. It's just texture. It's lightweight, it's recycled, and the little micro texture they've put on this middle part gives you a little bit of extra grip. So I'm pumped that it should have a much longer life of looking basically new. But then there's also a whole bunch of other little things. Like the horizontal scroll wheel is moved a bit higher up, which is awesome for me because I use it all the time while video editing. The mouse click is also now, with the last 2 generations, super silent, which is nice in a studio environment like this. There's also a third button added up at the front here in front of the forward and back buttons that can be customized. And then the biggest new addition is actually haptics. And so that's kind of a bold thing to try. Obviously, you have mouse clicks already, but they've added a haptic motor for even more clicks. It's in the middle of the mouse, kind of like right by your thumb, kind of like a smartphone's vibration motor. So when you press this silicon gesture area down here, you can feel it click. Even though it's not actually moving, it's a very convincing click. And then you can turn that up or down in settings, along with tons of other stuff like setting that to be a quick launch shortcut ring for any of your favorite apps, or spaces, or mission control on a Mac, or you can even make your own macros. So the Logitech Options Plus app is just a Fantasyland level of playground for people trying to maximize their productivity. It's kind of like this little Grand Theft Auto weapons select, but for your computer mouse. I personally don't use a ton of these like quick launching features because I am a keyboard and raycast shortcut person on the Mac anyway, but I can see how people would love this. I feel like this is becoming like the Porsche 911 of computer mice, maybe? Like, hear me out. This is not changing very much from generation to generation. It keeps the same silhouette, the iconic shape that everyone knows. But each time they improve a little bit and iterate over and over to the nth degree. And it's the most important product for that company, so they don't want to change it too much. But also, it's just like the ideal enthusiast daily driver. And it's still expensive and doesn't have the best numbers on paper. Like, this is still a $120 computer mouse with a 120 hertz polling rate, where like there are mice out there with 1,000 hertz, 2,000, 8,000 hertz polling rates. But it's not a gaming mouse. It's just a rock solid, pricey, but ideal daily. It's about the most stable, reliable thing you could ask for, and it even now has a USB Type-C dongle, which I'm shocked we actually don't see more of. But yeah, this mouse is absolutely still dope tech. All right, next up is a YouTube legend in its own right. This is the new Devialet Phantom. So I feel like there was a whole era of a couple months on YouTube where a thumbnail with the Phantom in it was like an automatic million views and everybody had to check this thing out. I've actually already covered it twice on Dope Tech, first in the white and gold version, then the Phantom 2, which was smaller but a bit more reasonably priced, so it was a natural follow-up to the expensive first one. And now they came out with this, which is the Devialet Phantom Ultimate. And so there's two sizes of it. There's a smaller 98 decibel version, and then there's this, which is the bigger, louder, more powerful 108 decibel version. So the idea has not changed at all. It's an all-in-one speaker system with a tweeter and woofers that not only gets crazy loud and sounds really good, but it also has this big, dramatic, moving membrane for the woofers and kind of looks like an alien head, if you ask me. They're definitely a conversation starter. But there are also new drivers and a new internal circuitry to make them more efficient and continue to sound even better. But yeah, this is the larger 108 decibel version here, and on this stand, which is kind of the best way to get it close to head level, they're pretty awesome. They're kind of more dense, actually, than you would expect. Picking up each one, it's almost 25 pounds. But yeah, apparently this is the amount of space you'll need to deliver 108 decibels versus the significantly smaller 98 decibel version. And there's also a new app that lets you play with more modes and even pair two together in stereo mode, which is what I have over here by this TV. There's another one over on the other side, and two of them paired together is just crazy. They get ridiculously loud if you want them to, but also just in normal volume, they sound really good. There's an incredible amount of bass. It fills the room, whatever size room you're in, it's going to fill the room. And the stereo separation now of having a left-right channel with these things, it's mad. It sounds crazy. And fun fact, I now mostly see these in Newark Airport. I think it's the older version, but next time you're in Newark Airport, look up in the corners of the little kiosks and the tiny stores they have in between gates. And I guarantee you'll start seeing tons of these little speakers from Devialet, and you'll never be able to unsee them again. At least if you're like me and spend probably too much time in Newark Airport. Anyway, cool overall, obviously, but not a ton of change, still very expensive, and not as hype as they used to be. So I covered the Samsung Galaxy Tab 7 Plus in 2020. And it was the third highest viewed Dope Tech episode that we'd ever made. And once again, it was the highest viewed part of that video. So it feels right to revisit the monster Samsung tablet since we don't get the chance to do this every year. And they do refresh it almost every year. Now, back in 2020, the angle for what made this a potential iPad killer was just this incredible hardware. A massive OLED display in a razor-thin case. In your hands, it barely feels real. It looks crazy. It looks like a movie prop. It's awesome. So 5 years later, this is the Samsung Galaxy Tab S11 Ultra, and it's still pretty ridiculous. Now, you might think that the iPad, with all the improvements that it has made, has eliminated this rivalry, because they've done like a lot of the things, right, that this used to do. It has that super, super thin build now. It has Apple Silicon, and it has iPad OS, which has done a lot of cool things with software. But if you've been paying attention, the Samsung tablets have done a lot of that stuff too, and some new stuff. So it's keeping that rivalry alive. So the Tab S11 Ultra now has a ridiculous laptop-sized 14.6-inch 3K AMOLED display. That's still bigger and higher resolution than any iPad Pro, with plenty of brightness and pitch black blacks. And it's also now even more thin than ever before at, get this, 5.1 millimeters. That's not just thinner than most tablets. That is thinner than the iPad Pro, thinner than the iPhone Air, and just about anything this big with a screen on it. And yet it still has a bigger battery, an 11,600 milliamp hour battery. There's also still up to 16 gigs of RAM. There's still micro SD card support for expandable storage, but there's also still up to 1 terabyte of built-in storage. It also supports the new S Pen, and it starts at $1,200 for the big one, which, yes, is $100 less than the big iPad Pro. But maybe the most interesting is all the software features that Samsung added to this tablet to keep it competing with iPad OS, which just got that big makeover with iPad OS 26. So on the S11 Ultra, you can have apps automatically load in windowed form every time. You can resize windows to whatever size and shape you want, like literally any size and any shape. The window management features are all super intuitive. You can throw a window over to the side of the screen, throw it up to the top to go full screen, and then you can have multiple different desktops saved with these specific window layouts to come back to. Easy. You can also link it to your phone so that you can make phone calls and send texts on your tablet. Plus, it's still crazy good at all that media stuff that it's always been great at. It's still a wider aspect ratio than any iPad. The contrast ratio of AMOLED is still incredible. And another thing, this isn't nanotexture by any means, but it does have pretty good anti-reflective properties, which make a difference to me in this light-filled studio. So this screen looks good all the time. So yes, the iPad has gotten better, but these Samsung tablets have definitely also gotten better. Not perfect. There's still, the Samsung quirks, and this one also is not a Snapdragon chip, but still really good. And it's clear that they've positioned this right alongside the iPad as a viable alternative and even a killer for some people. Still dope tech. And I would also say, check out the video that I made on switching between iOS and Android, because there are a lot of things that these companies do to try to steal users from each other, and it's fascinating, and it was worth an entire separate video, so I'll link it below. Now, a quick word from today's sponsor. All right, thanks to Google and Best Buy for sponsoring this portion of the video. So the holiday season is upon us, and getting gifts for loved ones is always a tough dance to do. Like, is this something I actually want, or is this a good price for this thing? Where do I even start? But the Google Holiday 100 can help you make sure you're finding the best gifts, because they've taken all of the search and trends data from the past year and put it together into a one-stop shop to find anything that anyone's interested in. And then alongside Google Shopping, you also get a bunch of other tools to help you sort through everything, probably the best of which being Price Insights, which literally gives you the price trends of a thing you're going to get over time, so you can make sure it's really a sale when it says it's a holiday sale. And all the products are sorted into collections and categories, so you'll always have an easy jumping off point to find something you're interested in. And it's as easy as that. Switch 2 is one of the biggest tech trends of 2025, and rightfully so. Got a bunch of big upgrades from the last one. Bigger screen, higher refresh rate, and of course the new Mario Kart. So when you go to look for gifts this holiday season, check out the Google Holiday 100 at the link in the description. And thanks to Google Shopping and Best Buy for helping me unwrap the holidays and be a better gift giver. All right, back to the video. So 9 years ago, I did an 8K RED camera on Dope Tech. And even longer ago, at CES 2016, I did the Nikon D500 in Dope Tech. And the reason I bring this up is, in the meantime, each company has released several other cameras, but then something really interesting happened. Nikon bought RED. Now, in the long, long history of people's favorite tech companies getting purchased, how many of those are a story that ends with everyone being happy, other than people getting paid? Not very many. But with this one, there was at least a chance. There was an opportunity for something really cool. Because Nikon had been toiling away in maybe a distant third place to Canon and Sony for a while, and they've been looking for a way to just break into this mirrorless camera space. And Red has been making incredible high-quality cinema cameras and patenting tons of technology for a while, but never really coming down to an affordable price. So the question is, what are they gonna do? Like, why did Nikon buy Red? Are they finally gonna join forces and create something that can compete with Sony and Canon in the mirrorless space? Are they finally gonna break out and make an affordable, high-quality camera that can actually sell? So we waited, and we waited, and this year, our patience was finally rewarded because they came out with this thing. This is the Nikon ZR, and this is a full-frame mirrorless camera. A collaboration, now that Nikon and Red are one, with a 24-megapixel stacked CMOS sensor, Nikon Z mount, 6K 60 video, 7.5 stops of in-body image stabilization, 15 stops of dynamic range. It shoots R3D, and with this huge 4-inch swiveling touchscreen on the back. This camera really comes out swinging. The spec sheet is awesome, and so it's less of like a Canon R5 competitor and more of like a FX3 competitor. FX3 is very popular, but that camera is $4,000, and this thing is about $2,200. So this thing immediately becomes very interesting, especially to me, someone who's been shooting Red for a while, because it becomes right away the smallest Red camera, and it becomes the Red camera probably with the best autofocus by a mile. And something I've talked about before is so many videos are actually shaped by the tools in subtle ways, but if you make videos, you kind of notice this stuff. Like MKBHD videos, for example, because I shoot them on mostly Red cameras, are all manual focus all the time because they don't really have very good autofocus. But philosophically, I feel like it should be the other way around. The tool should enable whatever creative thing you want to make. So as much as I love the quality of a Red camera, I'm always interested in more flexible cameras, ones that I can go around and shoot in more flexible spaces and more scenarios, but the footage still looks really good. That's like the dream. So I obviously don't need this to be a picture-taking camera by any means, and it kind of isn't. I just need it to be able to travel more easily than this and shoot video that can match to it pretty well. And thankfully, it does do that. It's not without its quirks. It also definitely has some little asterisks. So it's not exactly the same R3D, but it's R3D NE, which is still compressed RAW and still pretty good, but a little bit different. But also, as a video camera, the ergonomics are kind of weak. There is no EVF, there's no top handle. Even the side grip here is pretty small for a video focus camera. There's also a micro HDMI port instead of full-size HDMI. There is a single CF Express Type B slot and then a micro SD card slot instead of another full-size slot. I don't think I've ever seen that on a cinema camera. And at the end of the day is Z mount, which means Nikon lenses fit natively, but the Z mount thankfully is very adaptable, so that isn't some horrible downside. But yeah, that's about it. I really like this thing. It is an awesome camera with an awesome screen for an awesome price. But more amazingly, it is a result of two companies merging into one and the consumer actually getting a win out of it. I feel like that never happens, so I'm happy to see that. This obviously isn't a full review of this camera with a ton of sample footage, but I will link some of my favorite reviews from other creators down below, so if you want to check that out, take it from me or take it from them. But yeah, another fun, little random dope tech thing that's new versus what we've seen in the past. And it's been a fun retro type of dope tech video. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.